Hey, what's up guys? So today we're going to be going over the new patch details for Season 20's PTR. These are live right now and you guys can go ahead and test them out, but we're here to go over all the patch notes, the buffs, and the nerfs over here. This video, just as a heads up though, will not be covering the sets. This is going to already kind of expect you to understand what the heck these new sets do. If you guys haven't seen these new sets, there are 3 new sets into the game added for Season 20 over on the PTR. And if you guys want to check those out, they'll be pinned down below. But we're here to go over the buffs and the nerfs to the sets, basically the new changes over here. And if you guys did acquire any of the items, they will be modified to affect the new buffs and nerfs. So you don't actually have to reacquire your gear on your PTR. These will already be changed. But anyways, let's go ahead and hop right into the new patch notes. I'll leave it down below if you guys want to read every single thing, but we're here to use the condensed version courtesy of Wudijo, which is another great Diablo content creator, and he basically did a lot of math, so I'm going to go ahead and use his over here because it's really well done. So anyways, first off, let's go ahead and get started. So first off, these changes again are live already, and the gameplay that you guys are seeing in the background has the new Barbarian buffs for the Frenzy set, which the best buff is really just the Frenzy lasting twice as long. There's a lot of times where you run into the situation of, let's say, the Rift Guardian is spawning, or you're moving from one area to, let's say, floor number 2, and the Frenzy buff goes away and you have to sit there and you have to ramp it up all over again. So it's a huge, nice buff to Barbarian in that department, which, again, is the gameplay in the background. But let's go ahead and talk about Witch Doctor first, because there's a huge buff to the Witch Doctor, as well as a nerf here, but overall it's pretty much just a buff. So let's go ahead and hop right into it. So with Witch Doctor, with the 2-piece buff, the Big Bad Voodoo lets you basically have its effect live more often. The biggest problem is between corners on doors, it would get stuck, as well as sometimes it would be too far behind, so it just follows you better. So overall this is just a buff, but it's more so quality of life. And then with the 4-piece bonus, instead of 50% damage reduction, you will now get 60% damage reduction, so that's an additional 20% toughness. It's a nice little change over here. The Barber got nerfed a little bit, so instead of it being 1.5 attacks per second, it is now 1.4 attacks per second. So this is a 6 to 7% DPS nerf in a group, and slightly less in the solo department. Phantasm Tick now is half as slow for twice the damage. This actually has to do with lag. If some of you guys have played Barbarian with the Whirlwind build and you had area damage, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But with Witch Doctor, this is the same thing. It's just that it just applies too often. So this is not really a nerf or a buff. It's basically the same if you want to think of it like that, because it ticks so fast anyways. I wouldn't really worry about it not ticking at the same speed, because it's hitting twice as much anyways. So don't worry too much about this. It's not really a change at all in terms of the DPS. There's also a nerf to the Manitou attack rate, but it doesn't really matter because the overall changes are going to be a huge buff, which comes down to the next thing I want to talk about. But he says that it will seem like a solo RG kills will only be marginally slower in the format, but again, it's not really that big of a deal. But the Ring of Emptiness can be procced by 1 out of Haunt or Locust, so this is a huge deal. If you guys haven't seen how the highest greater rifts push, instead of having Wormwood inside of the Kanai's cube, they would manually have to cast Haunt and Locust. Some people would use Wormwood to make it so Locust would automatically cast, but no longer do you need to go ahead and do that, so this frees up either a skill slot or a weapon slot for your Kanai's cube, so that will be excellent. And it's going to be a huge DPS buff over here. He says probably 15 to 20% DPS, and then from the extra skill slot, a lot of people might be using Vision Quest because this whole set scales off of your mana regeneration, so something to give you extra mana regen will give you essentially more damage out of it. Or if you were doing the speed builds with Wormwood, you no longer need to have that, so you can go ahead and throw in something else to make your build even faster. And then he says overall, 2 tiers buff should be best trash clear on non-season and second best after Necro for season only, and above Hydra Wizard now. Hydra Wizard used to be the best, and now he's saying that Witch Doctor is looking a little bit better than that. So he's saying about 142 to 144 as far as pushing on the highest graders. Keep in mind, Wudijo is a very trustworthy source. He pushes on the leaderboards all the dang time, so I would say this is a good source of reference, and I'll link the full post down below. Anyways, next up though, as far as Wizard goes, so with the 4-piece bonus, now the Hydra heads having yourself die, and also shields keep them safe, which is interesting. So the Hydra heads, I guess what I should put is the shields will protect the Hydra heads from being destroyed. Before, if any of you guys have used like Squirt's Necklace, if you took shield damage, it would not make it so you would lose damage with your Squirt's Necklace because you're taking shield damage. So now that will keep them safe. So that's overall just a straight up buff because your damage and damage reduction relies on having those Hydra heads. With the 6-piece bonus, you get a nice little 20% DPS buff, so instead of dealing 1,000% more damage, you're dealing 1,200% more damage per Hydra head. And then also channeling items will be addressed at a later point, which we'll get to over here. But anyways, with the Magistrate plus Serpent Sparker, it used to add 700, but it is now 550, so this is overall a nerf, adding them together, that is. So the amount of damage is a lot lower on the multipliers. In fact, I'm going to go to the actual PTR notes because they actually specify it a little bit better here than his notes as far as the changes over here. So anyways, with the Serpent Sparker, you can see that they used to deal 450 to 600, and it is now 350 to 450, and it used to be same numbers over here, 350 to 450. So it's a pretty big nerf overall on the damage multiplier, but you also get, again, a 20% DPS buff, but that's if you are using the set. A lot of people actually opted to run a Legacy of Dreams build, so they ignored that completely over there, so that this DPS buff doesn't matter because the best build didn't use the set in the first place over here. So anyways, the multiplier used to be times 49 and is now times 30, but you also have this as a higher multiplier, if that makes any sense. But again, this is overall just straight up nerf to the wizard, and it really comes down to the channeling effect not being able to be procced multiple times, which you shouldn't be able to do it, but it was a glitch that people utilize. And overall, anyways, he says 3 tiers nerf to LOD, big buff to the set, mostly because of the 4-piece fix over here, where again, your Hydras won't actually die when you take the damage if you have shield, which most people opted to play anyways. But then on top of that, he says that the Mammoth is very laggy, top solo clears probably around 140, in group probably outclassed by Necromancer season only and Witch Doctor, but still 150 capable. So it's still very powerful. Obviously later down when the season gets towards the end, everyone's going to have very high power on anyways, and the set is still relatively strong for that build. But again, a lot of people use the LOD build anyways. Alright, so with Barbarian, which you guys are seeing in the gameplay, so with the 2-piece bonus, double damage can be procced by Frozen now, important for Rift Guardian, killed, useless in solo. There is some items, and I'm not sure if it's going to be viable to use Frostburn and have like some chance to freeze your enemies when you deal cold damage, let's say. But dealing double damage is pretty big because a lot of people are opting to either use a shout, which makes it so you can drop a skill slot completely here. In my build, I'm just doing a speed build, so I'm just running like run like the wind. But you can manually cast shout to make them feared, and then they will be taking double damage. As well as a small little buff over here. There is a 50% damage reduction. It changed to 60%, so that's 20% additional toughness. Frenzy, double duration, which is the most important thing with this build. Again, when you are waiting for the Rift Guardian to spawn, sometimes you lose all of your stacks, and that was terrible, obviously. There's no DPS buffs, unfortunately. And then overall slight buff from survivability to top solo clears probably around 135 to 139. RG Crate viable is alright, but quite behind Necromancer season only and Crusader. Tier 150 RG kills possible in 2 to 2.5 minutes. Advantage that is Barb can bring some utility like Warcry, Stomp It, Glow Summon, extra pulling to grab everything together. And there was some theory crafting behind utilizing the shouts to make them take double damage for kind of like a ZDPS build, if you will. But anyways, so I'll explain the nerf with the channeling. Basically, there was an Arcane Torrent rune, and you would basically have Etch Sigil proc more times than it should. It was a bug, it's being nerfed. So basically, Wizard's in a worse spot right now. There's a lot of people that were already complaining about it. Anyways, the big thing that I wanted to point out that this guy pointed out, which is actually a really good point, and I hope they do take these into consideration. So, the order that your Hydra loses head is the last cast first, meaning that your newest Hydra that you put out, if the other one happens to like lose a head, what happens is you have to cast Hydra twice. So if you're at 9 Hydras, a lot of times you'll have to cast Hydra twice because the one that lost the head is the last cast loses it first, if that kind of makes sense. Basically what it requires you to do is if you have 9 Hydra heads, if you recast Hydra, it will resummon the Hydra that already has 5 heads, and it should just re-add back the extra head, or somehow just summon the new Hydra with the full set of heads, if that makes any sense. So basically, he's kind of complaining about that. A lot of people are just complaining in general about the channeling of being like the most viable way to play. But again, for the most part, that's just the way it goes. I mean, it's just the way that the build is oriented. And if you don't like to channel, hey, there's Barbarian, there's Witch Doctor, there are other options. And if you guys want to see gameplay as well as explanation of all of these builds, I did a video specifically going over each one and kind of what the best setup is. I do want to mention though, with the Hydra build, there is a nerf to the way Etch Sigil works, although in my gameplay we were doing a speed build, so it didn't really matter. But there is a nerf to the Hydra. The rest are pretty much just going to be even better, and it's using the exact same pieces of gear on both of them anyways. And in fact, the Wizard will still use the exact same pieces of gear, it just happens to be nerfed, but it's still considered the best in slot because, well, that's just what is available to you. In fact, the set build might actually be a little bit better than the LOD build, again, because of the new little buff as well as the small little nerfs there. But anyways, that's it for the PTR patch notes. Again, I'll pin everything down below if you guys want to check out anything else. But man, I'm excited to get back on Wolcen after the servers go back up. If you guys haven't seen, pretty much every Diablo content creator is playing it. That's myself included right now. And if you guys haven't seen Wolcen, it's a new action RPG. I've been basically uploading a lot of it. And if you guys want to check it out, I'll put the first part of our playthrough down below pinned as well. But anyways, thanks for tuning in. I'd love to know what you guys think of these nerfs. Overall, I'm kind of disappointed that Wizard is getting a nerf. I wish Barb got a little bit of buff in the damage department, maybe by a little bit. Can we get that 20% little buff there? I think it'd be quite nice. But overall, I would say these changes are pretty good, just more quality of life. And again, the Wizard thing was a bug. They were probably fixing it anyways, but I wish they got another buff, maybe some other department, because I like it when they at least, if they're taking something away, at least give us something. But anyways, thanks for tuning in, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, drop a like on it. And if you are new here and you want to see more Diablo content as well as action RPG content, because like I said, we're playing Wolcen a lot here, hit subscribe, turn on the bell, and you'll see more very soon. But thanks for tuning in, guys. Have a good one, and I'll catch you in the next video. Have a good one, and I'm out. Peace.